Harvest is a game about war, more specifically the aftermath of the First World War, but in an alternate history and dieselpunk setting. Now in this alternate history, Poland, Russia and Germany, called in this game Polania, Rusviet and Saxony, are all still at war. Oh, and on top of this, you also have access to these massive mech things, which make the combat even more intense and cinematic. Now in the game, there are 3 campaigns for each of the 3 factions, with 7 missions per campaign, so that adds up to quite a lot of content. And in these campaigns, you go through the story of that specific faction and their struggle in this war. Every story has 2 sides, or in this case 3, so you get to see, well, the side of every single one of these factions. And we all know that I do love a little bit of grey morality, so I do really appreciate being able to see, you know, this war from everyone's point of view. I'd like to mention right at the start, by the way, while I'm talking about missions, you can get a demo of this game, and when I was playing the demo, like, I played most of the first Polanian campaign in just the demo, and then I decided to buy the game. So I'm pretty sure you can get quite a ways through the game just on the demo. So if you're even vaguely interested, definitely pick that up. It's both on Steam, on Epic, you know, every single launch you can imagine. Now the first campaign, which is the Polanian one, is the one that they recommend you play first, because as you work your way through that campaign, it slowly introduces you to more and more faction mechanics. You know, first of all, you're just controlling a single unit, and then it gives you multiple units, and then it gives you buildings, and then engineers that can build more buildings, then giant mechs. And as you progress through the campaign, you unlock more and more mechanics until you're basically playing the full game. So it's a really good way to slowly introduce you to the game and build you up rather than throwing everything at you at once and then you feeling way too overwhelmed. Now, since I'm a massive scrub, I've only managed to play a little bit of the Polanian campaign, and, you know, when I was doing all my computer reinstalls, it's deleted all my saves. So I'm only about halfway through the Polanian campaign on my current saves, but let me assure you, as I was playing through this, I was enjoying all the missions. You know, they were really intense. Some of them took me quite a few tries to learn how to play them correctly because, you know, as I said, it throws different mechanics at you. So when you come across a new mechanic, for a little while, you're quite confused and don't know how it works. But as I said, it introduced them slowly. So I think it's very adequate and it's not too challenging, whilst also being challenging enough to be, you know, interesting and not just cakewalk. Now, the story itself, it's fine, really. You know, it's a strategy game. We're not expecting something deep like The Witcher. The voice acting is a little bit wonky on the English, so I would probably recommend, you know, if you care about that sort of thing, setting the language set into native and then using English subtitles. I think that gives you a more authentic experience. Although if you speak any of those languages, you might think that the voice acting is bad, but, you know, I only speak English because I'm an English person, and we don't speak of languages. We're too stupid.
Anna, what are you doing?
I know you told me to wait, but... Papa!
Anna? Co ty wyprawiasz?
Ja wiem, że kazałeś mi czekać, ale... Tato!
But yeah, the strategy, totally adequate for a strategy game. To be honest, it's just kind of one of those things where it's just the story takes you from mission to mission. You know, that's the only objective of it. So that's completely fine with me. And that's enough about what the game is about. Now I'm going to tell you how the game actually works because, you know, it's kind of important. Now, the gameplay, it does remind me of old strategy games, you know, like Dawn of War and Star Wars Empire at War. Both bangers, by the way, so if you want me to play any of those, do let me know. Now, the maps are quite small, which does lend itself to very micro-focused gameplay. You know, every single unit, you want to be controlling them, telling them exactly what to do in these really intimate, close-quarters fights, rather than, you know, something like Ashes of the Singularity, where it's pretty much all about the macro because you just have a grillion units and you're just kind of sending them in a massive ball to take care of the enemies. Now, along with the maps, the unit sizes are also quite small, so you're never going to have a massive sprawling army that covers the entire battlefield. But to be honest, when you get this many mechs in a single army, they start to just get in each other's way. So having any more than this, I think would definitely be too much. Initially, I didn't really like having this few units because, you know, I quite like to overwhelm the enemy with numbers because that's kind of fun. But once I got used to it, I actually did really enjoy it. It forced me to make my perfect army rather than just spamming a load of whatever units I can think of. And to me, that makes it a lot more strategic. And, you know, when we're playing a strategy game, that's kind of what you're looking for. Now, in the campaign missions, you get all sorts of different mechanics and objectives that really change how the game works, and that is really fun. But I think the most standard style of gameplay is the skirmishing battles, where, you know, you just fight against each other's bases. So I'm going to show you that. Now, you can play skirmishes on 2, 4, and 6 player maps, and obviously, as the player count goes up, so does the map size. You can set as many teams as you want. You can have a free-for-all, you can have 3-on-1, you can have 2-on-2, whatever you want. Oh, and also, this game has multiplayer, so, you know, if you have any buddies that play this game and you want to go online against other people or against other AI, then you can definitely do that. Now, for explanation's sake, I did a quick 1 versus 1 on Border River since, you know, I love me some snow, and to me it's also the most balanced and symmetrical of the 2 maps, and that's very satisfying to me. By default, the win condition is domination, which means you basically just capture these flag positions on the map, and you accrue points over the course of the battle, and when you reach a certain number of points, you win. Now, I personally don't really like this. I like fighting to the last man. I like more, you know, you have to actually take out the enemy rather than just capturing these positions and defending them. So I decided to play on the aptly named Annihilation, where you have to completely annihilate all traces of your enemy. Anyway, it's time to explain the actual gameplay mechanics while you're playing, so get out your pen, get out your notepad, because this is coming at you fast. Now in any game mode, by default, you will lose if you lose your HQ building, your headquarters. This building right here, if you lose that, you lose the game. So priority number 1 is protect that at all costs. Now, normally the enemy doesn't really attack this in the early game, so you don't have to worry about it too much, but it's definitely something to remember. Now, priority number 2 is getting as many resources as you can. There are only 2 resources in this game. There's iron and there's oil, and you can get them in a variety of ways. Capturing resource buildings provide passive income of resources constantly. You can also eventually upgrade these buildings to provide even more resources passively. You can also pick resources up off the ground, which provide you with a larger instant hit of resources, but it's only usable once. Now, iron and oil are used for absolutely everything, as I mentioned, building and upgrading buildings, as well as recruiting units. So the first thing you want to do every single game is capture the nearest resource buildings that you can. So get the oil, get the iron, and then spread out from there. You know, capture all the ones that you possibly can. Rush the enemy to this, because having a good early game and getting as many resources as possible will put you ahead for the mid game. You know, it's one of those sorts of things. You really need to plan ahead here. So take all the resource buildings on your side of the map, as well as collecting any resources around the floor on your side of the map. Then once you've done that, you want to expand into enemy territory, capture any resource buildings that they haven't got yet, maybe contest some of theirs, and capture any resources that are on the floor, because if you don't get it, they will. Now is also a good time to open up any weapons crates, which basically allow any standard infantry unit to change what weapons they are using. You can find medical supplies, you can find anti-armor, you can find machine guns, you can find all sorts, so it's definitely worth doing. A little cheese thing that I like to do is recruit engineers from my headquarters, send them to the weapons crates. That way you're saving about 50 iron rather than recruiting your regular riflemen or infantry units, and then your engineers will just become, you know, a better unit for no money at all. So it seems like a really good deal to me. I like doing that. It usually works. Now, once all the resource buildings are captured, you want to use your engineers to build a barracks. Now, this building will allow you to recruit better infantry units than just your standard HQ. Now, the units actually vary per faction, but the unit types are generally like this. You get engineers, which are your builders. They construct everything. You know, they construct your barracks, your workshops, which you use to recruit mechs. They can also construct defensive buildings like bunkers, razor wire, sandbags, and landmines. All factions also have riflemen, grenadiers, anti-armor infantry, medics, and anti-armor mounted cannons. You can also upgrade barracks to unlock even more units, and again, this varies per faction, but generally, you get a mounted machine gun, mounted mortars, and some unique faction units like machine gunners, flamethrowers, exosuits, and more. All this listing reminds me, by the way, if you want to see a faction breakdown for every single faction and every single unit in that faction, then comment below saying, "Yay!" and I'll get right on that. While we're on the topic of units, that reminds me, this is one of those games where units gather XP as they fight. So that means once your unit has done a certain amount of fighting and gathered a certain amount of XP, it will level up. Now, leveling up grants you some stat bonuses, so they'll be better just overall, and it also grants active abilities. Now, for infantry, this is things like an enrage ability where they can fire faster and not be suppressed, and this is the same for mech units. They get all sorts of fun activatable abilities, but I don't want to spoil that for you because they are really cool, and I'd like to show you that in a separate video. Now, at this point in the game, I also like to build some bunkers to defend my positions. Now, you can upgrade your bunkers to have automatic turrets in them, and depending on the faction, this will be good versus a variety of units. Some might be good versus armor, some might be good versus infantry. So it's definitely worth just hovering over it and seeing what it says. You can also man these bunkers with infantry, but it's worth noting that when a unit goes into this, it doesn't change what it's firing. So if you send in anti-armor, it's still going to be anti-armor. If you send in machine gunners, they're still going to be machine gunners. You know, it's not going to change anything. They're still going to be as effective versus the same units as they were if they were out of the bunker. Once all this is done, you're into the mid game, and now this is where the game gets kind of slow in skirmishes because the AI doesn't really know what to do at this point. At this point, I like to save up and then build my workshop, which allows me to recruit mechs. Now again, this varies from faction to faction, but generally you'll have one that's really good versus infantry, and you'll have one that's decent versus armor. Of course, you can upgrade the workshop to get even better mechs, and after that, again, it varies. But generally, you get one that's artillery, you get one that's a unit carrier, you can get ones that are anti-mech, and of course, some that are anti-infantry. So it's definitely worth upgrading these buildings as soon as you can to unlock the most elite of the elite units. Also worth knowing is that once you've built and upgraded your barracks and your workshop, you can call in reserves. So reserves are these units that you pick before you even start the battle. Now, they cost a certain amount of points each, so you can have 2 levels of it. One level you get when you build a barracks or a workshop, and the second level you get when you build the advanced barracks or the advanced workshop. And you can call these in. It's not free, it does cost resources, but you don't need to have the building that can recruit these types of units to unlock them. So that is pretty neat. You can get some advanced mechs before you have an advanced workshop. Among these reserves, you'll get one faction leader, and the faction leaders, again, vary per faction, but generally you have a solo infantry unit, which is normally the faction hero. You get a medium mech and then a massive super giga mech, and depending on the eliteness of that unit, it will either come in the first reserve or the second reserve, because it'd be broken AF if you got the massive world-ending mech in the first reserve when you have built a basic barracks. That just won't make any sense. Now, these leaders are super powerful in general combat, and on top of this, also come with active abilities without the need for leveling up. They're normally super tough, but can still be taken down, but unlike other units, if they get taken down, they will stay on the battlefield and then can be revived by your other units. So this can be either a really good thing or a bad thing. So if you get taken down and you're kind of on the back lines or somewhere where you can defend, you can instantly res that person, give them a heal up, and then send them straight back in. On the flip side of this, if they are far too deep in enemy lines and then they go down, they can end up stuck there until the end of the game, which is pretty depressing. So anyway, once you get to this point where you have all your best units, you are now ready to complete your mission. You are now ready to move in and take out their headquarters. Personally, I like to systematically take out all their resource buildings so that all the resources are mine and they can do nothing but sit back and watch as I move in and take them out. There's really nothing quite like that feeling of having the power to take someone's life and snuff it out when the time is right. The power over life and death. It's like being a god, a golden god. In the game, of course. You know, in real life, that'd be fucking psychotic. So yeah, once all the resources are mine, I march in with my massive giga army, and at this point, strategy pretty much just flies straight out the window. I just, you know, control A, even though that doesn't work in the game, and then just move everything in, destroy their buildings systematically, finishing with the headquarters, because if you start with the headquarters and it takes you too long, they can recruit units even with the very limited resource that they have, and then they can just be more of a pain in the ass. So definitely take out workshop, and then barracks, and then HQ, and then that's the game. Now, as I said, the campaign offers different objectives, and there are also actual challenge missions in the game that provide you with different styles of gameplay, you know, defending, having to lose as few units as possible, having to capture as many resources as possible in a certain time limit. They're really fun challenges, and they do add a lot of replay value to the game outside of, you know, just skirmishes. On top of this, there are also challenges within challenges, so you can be doing, you know, all the campaign missions and then add these different modifiers, you know, secondary objectives, weird bonus things that you have to use, like don't use any mounted weapons or don't pick up any weapons crates. And then in the skirmishes and the challenge modes, you can set different modifiers, like you have to complete in a certain time limit, not lose a certain number of units, have your units have reduced health. There's all sorts of different stuff that you can do to really challenge yourself and become a master of the game. And as I said, get lots of replay value out of it, because, you know, you don't want to just play this game for like 20 minutes and then be done with it. You want it to last you quite a while, because that's what strategy games are. They are meant to last you for quite a long time, if you ask me. What do I know? I only have 800 hours in Warhammer 2, and I still haven't finished campaigns on, I would say, probably over 3/4 of the lords in the game. Now we come to the most important question of all: is it fun? Now, we can't really define fun, as it varies. You know, I might enjoy something that you don't enjoy, but chances are, if you're here and you've watched the video to this point, you generally enjoy the same sorts of games that I do. So to me, yeah, it's pretty fun. Now, the gameplay is really solid. You know, it's super strategic. I really like the battling. It's really satisfying. And while it may not have the largest depth of units, it is completely adequate. You know, you can use all of the units in the game in a single battle, and that is really cool. But personally for me, I like to try out different unit types every single time that I play a skirmish. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this time I used, you know, all my anti-infantry units. Maybe next time let's try all the anti-armor. Maybe let's try some flying units. That'd be pretty neato. Although really difficult, because flying units add a whole new dimension, literally, to the game. But, you know, just some suggestions from me, because I'm a big nerd. I don't know anything about game development. It'd probably never happen, but, you know, it can't hurt to ask. As I mentioned, the combat, plenty of strategy to it. It's got that classic rock, paper, scissors of, you know, units that are anti-infantry, units that are anti-armor, units that are anti-anti-armor. This means that rather than just spamming a bunch of the most overpowered units, it really does benefit you to pick and choose different units for different roles in your army to have a balanced one to take on anything the enemy throws at you. Because it's all well and good bringing the most powerful mechs in the game, but if the enemy brings nothing but anti-armor, you're eventually going to get whittled down. Now, I would say that the combat is at its most strategic when you have no units at all, when you are just using infantry, because that means you need to use cover systems, you need to use activatable abilities, you need to use positioning really well to master the battles. You know, if you don't put your units in cover, they will lose against weaker units. If you get a flank on the enemy, even if those units are more elite than yours, you will still win because you've got a flank on them and they're exposed. It's really neato. I really like it. It's fun getting units in a crossfire and working out the positioning just right. It's really, really good. Once you get mechs, the strategy kind of tends to drop off a little bit because, you know, mechs are so big. Positioning doesn't really matter. They can just walk through buildings. They can shoot through buildings. So that at that point, it does pretty much just become, you know, my mech shooting at your mech and seeing which one comes out on top. I mean, there is still a bit of strategy. If you shoot mechs in the rear, they take more damage. But if it's just a one-on-one mech fight, there's no chance you can get behind them. So as I said, my cannon versus your cannon. But it is still lots of solid fun. You can use your infantry at the same time to get a flank. So, you know, win-win. Of course, it goes without saying the game has a really cool look. All the loading screens have this beautiful artwork. In fact, I bought one of the more special editions of the game, so I got the art book and the soundtrack, which I'm going to come to in a minute. And yeah, all the art of this game is really, really beautiful. I really do love it. The actual art style in-game, you know, all the diesel punk stuff looks really neat. Oh, it's not like, you know, Cyberpunk on quadruple RTX or something, but it doesn't need to be. You know, it looks good enough so that you're not going to be playing the game thinking, wow, this looks like shit. You're going to be thinking, wow, this looks pretty good. Now, the soundtrack is also a really strong point. It varies depending on what faction you're playing, and it's really orchestral and dramatic and swells as you are doing things in battle and peters out as you are doing not much. It's really, really good. I really enjoy it. In fact, you've probably been listening to it for the majority of this video. So yeah, really fun, solid strategic gameplay, lots of replay value. It looks good. It sounds good. I give it a recommend. I guess I should probably give it a score since that's what, you know, reviews are actually supposed to do. But this isn't going to be one of those IGN reviews where the game is literally coming apart at the seams and they just give it a 5. So I think I'll give it about an 8 out of 10. You know, it's not the perfect game. To me, I think if it had more units and more variety in that third dimension, I think that'll just really push it to being super duper over the top strategic and lots more different units. But, you know, as it is right now, it's totally adequate. You know, they could add more units in DLCs in the future. They already have one DLC out, which is a little micro campaign about the Russian Revolution. I'm pretty excited to play that. So you never know, it could happen. But currently as it stands, 8 out of 10 is real good. If you like games like this, like Dawn of War and Star Wars Empire at War, then I can confidently say that I'm pretty sure you're going to like this. So there we have it, that's Iron Harvest. It's a game that isn't Warhammer 2. So to the 3 of you that have watched this video, I really do appreciate it so very, very much. I've been enjoying the heck out of this game, so I just want to make a video on it. And I figure, you know, it's strategy. And, you know, it's just a strategy channel, so it kind of makes sense. So let me know in the comments below any questions you have about the game. I'd be more than happy to answer you. I'm trying to answer comments as much as I possibly can, you know, if they warrant an answer. If you just comment saying pee pee poo poo, then I don't know what to say to that, but, you know, thank you for the comment. It really helps out the SEO. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more epic gaming content. So I think that covers everything. So for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn. Goodbye, comrades.